Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you are joining for the first time, this is part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution independently, and we always have a very exciting panel that is willing to share their insights and wisdom. So for today, we are going to be reviewing the solution called Infor LN. We have done multiple sessions on Infor. We have reviewed their corporate strategy. We have reviewed some of the other products. So this is going to be very interesting as well because this is their core flagship enterprise product. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Before we do that, we are going to start with everybody's intros. And I'm going to start with my intro. If you don't know me, I am Sam Gupta, principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients with ERP selection, ERP implementation, and any sort of ERP project recoveries. On that note, I am going to move to Dave for his intro.
Hey, everybody. My name is Dave Crysler, and I own an operations consulting business working with manufacturing leaders to help them systemize their business to achieve operational excellence. And I come to you with more than 20 years in operations management, implementing ERP and systemizing businesses. So thanks for having me, Sam.
Thank you so much for being here, Dave. Andy, can I ask you to introduce yourself next?
Absolutely. Thank you, Sam. My name is Andy Pratico. I've been involved with ERP software for manufacturing, small to mid-sized manufacturing companies all over North America. For about 4 decades, I've worked with all over 1,000 manufacturers. And through my experience over the years, I've written a book that's published that's on Amazon on how to select ERP software. So thank you for inviting me, Sam, and looking forward for the presentation.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Andy. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys send your comments and questions. We typically try to cover them during the show. If we run out of time, our panelists will make sure that you receive your answers. On that note, I am going to start with the briefing for today's solution, and then I would love to hear your commentary based on your experiences, Andy and Dave. So Infor LN overall, if you look at the Infor product portfolio, but before that, a little recap based on our Infor session that we did. So from the corporate strategy perspective, Infor is similar to Aptine. They have very similar strategy as Apicor. They are trying to promote the purpose-built ERP systems for the specific industries. Even though they have the purpose-built strategy, it's fairly similar to other ERP companies as well. The only difference being with Infor, at least that's what they claim, that you are going to get far more functionality as part of the package as opposed to some of the other ERP systems or vanilla ERP systems that we have in the market. Apicor follows similar strategy. They try to cram as much as possible for the companies. Obviously, it's not going to be as much as, let's say, if you go for a pharma ERP mom and pop, then they are probably going to have far deeper compliance related functionality, the quality related functionality for that micro vertical. But in the case of Infor, they provide a lot more functionality overall, especially when you talk about the manufacturing verticals. That's where they are really strong at. From the technical architecture perspective, the way Infor started, the whole journey has been buying a lot of different ERP systems, consolidating them, and they have an iPaaS and everybody in the market that are more of the integrator as opposed to developer of ERP. They all have some sort of iPaaS layer that they use to be able to integrate all of these products, and that's how they are trying to promote the products. So Infor does the same. Aptine is fairly similar overall from the technical architecture perspective. And in the case of Infor, their iPaaS, the whole operating system that allows them to deliver all of these different products to different industries is going to be called Infor OS. So most of their products, whether you talk about LNM3, Sightline, or the SXE product, which is targeted for distribution. They have some more products, but these are their major product lines that they are trying to promote as part of their cloud suite bucket. So Infor OS is going to be the layer that sort of integrates all of the products together, and they are trying to combine cloud suite based on some of the ERP offerings and then some of the best of breed options. Infor LN overall, from the product portfolio perspective, is the enterprise product that is typically targeted for aerospace, automotive, the large ones. Okay, industrial machinery, high-tech electronics is our 4 or 5 different verticals that they like to target. But if you compare Infor with SAP, it's a similar strategy. They have SAP has 3 products. Infor has a lot more. For specific industries, but Infor LN is their enterprise product, and it is going to be competing with other products such as QAD is very focused on manufacturing. QAD focuses on very large companies. IFS is going to be another competitor that is going to be competing with Infor LN. The reason QAD competes with Infor LN is going to be automotive space. Plex likes to compete with Infor LN, but Plex is more focused on the Toyota ecosystem. Infor LN has far deeper capabilities on the Honda ecosystem. Then you have IQMS. IQMS also has very deep Honda capabilities. For aerospace, Infor LN has far deeper capabilities for the aerospace. Now, if you compare the product lines, for example, let's say if you compare LN versus Sightline, and Andy, we are going to have a little debate there overall. But one of the things that we noticed in case of Epicor, as well as some of the smaller products from SAP, okay, one of the things that we noticed is the date on the operations on a Baan. Okay, that seems to be the differentiator on a lot of different products that are designed for complex products versus easy products to build, manufacture. And typically when I define easy, that's probably going to be in terms of the timeline, in and out. Okay, so when you are going to see a product for a job shop, typically their products are going to be built within 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, 5 hour, 6 hour, 8 hours. Okay, they typically don't need the date. Their scheduling is not as complex as what you are going to see in the larger manufacturing shops, and that's why Infor LN is slightly different. Okay, you are actually going to see the date. So sometimes I find it very interesting because some of these smaller products have date on their operations as well. For example, we saw dates in case of SAP Business One. Again, if we talk about on-prem experience, not the cloud experience, we saw dates in case of your Epicor as well. So they seem to be slightly stronger overall in terms of the project-driven manufacturing functionality. They will do far better overall in terms of the products that are going to be building like an aircraft or the landing gear. There's no way in the hell you can build that in 2 hours. I would like to find a manufacturing company that can probably build a landing gear in 2 hours. That will be impressive. But overall, the amount of time that goes in building these complex manufacturing product, that's where the real differentiator is. Whether you are a shop that is just building widgets that you can complete in 2 hours, and those are going to be manufacturing products. For example, Infor CSI, Epicor probably are aligned there. Some of the smaller vanilla product that can do manufacturing, but they typically do very widget-centric manufacturing products. But when you talk about the complex manufacturing, aerospace, automotive, where you are building complex devices, that's where Infor LN comes really handy. So I'll pause there. That's for the briefing. Now I'm opening for any commentary.
Well, for date, you're talking about start and end date of the project or the work order, as well as the operations or routing steps within. Is that what you mean, Sam?
So the dates, it's not only for the project, okay? It's also for the operations on a job. So let's say if you have a job shop, if you are going to go for something like global shop, they are not really designed for those complex products. They are designed for very tiny product that you're building now. So
cutting a piece of steel.
Yeah, so you are definitely going to have very strong project-based manufacturing in all of these products that are going to be, from SAP, from Microsoft. Infor LN does that. Surprisingly enough, Epicor has that as well. Okay, but you are also going to see dates on the operations. So in case of Infor LN, they have referred all of these manufacturing jobs as job shop job or shop floor job, something like that. I mean, we are going to review that. Okay, so they call the manufacturing job as the job, and on that operation you still have the dates, because the way scheduling works in these larger manufacturing shop, everything has to be aligned. The pegging has to be there of the operations, when you talk about service order versus transfer order versus your manufacturer. So everything needs to be aligned. It can't be just, this is my shop floor scheduling and I don't care for the service scheduling. Okay,
Absolutely right. No, you can't have shop scheduling in a complex environment unless you're not only estimating the dates of all the routing steps and operation steps, but actually tracking the actual dates of start and completion at all the steps. What size of a company do you think LN is targeted at, Sam? Like how many employees?
So I think Infor likes to position it only for companies that are going to be more than $100 million, I guess, or probably more. Maybe I don't think they will be positioning it for companies that are going to be lower in revenue. I don't know. I have never
don't think
seen.
so either. I think you're right. I think it's more like about 250 or larger. Yeah.
Exactly. But the other comment that I would like to make about LN has always been very SAP look and feel product. Okay, so when you look at the product, it's almost, and this is what is fascinating when you look at Infor products, because everything is going to be rendered by your Infor OS layer. So you are going to get that mingle feel, but underneath, if you look at all of these products are going to feel very different. For example, the way your M3 works operationally, it's a very different product than your Baan, than your and which is going to be Infor LN in this case, then all of the other products. So every products operate very different way, meaning when, let's say, if you are comfortable on Sightline, or you are comfortable on SXC product, or you are comfortable on M3, you are still going to feel switch over when you are going to use LN, because they don't follow the same architecture still. The only thing that is going to be consistent across these products is going to be that Infor OS layer, which is just the assembly, and then you have sort of the TV broadcasted as part of your Infor OS layer. So that's how these products are architected and designed. So now Infor LN is going to have very similar feel as SAP, because the product comes from Netherlands. That's where it was designed. So the way these screens are structured, and I'll show you some of those things, it has very, 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 very strong SAP feel in the product. In fact, if you look at the user reviews, it is still very European, non-US product. Okay, so you are not going to find a lot of installations of LN inside the US for some reason, and that's the trend that we have seen in case of SAP as well. I mean, SAP likes to win a lot more in Europe, South America. That's where they win a lot, because that's where the complexity is overall, from the financial regulation perspective, from the reporting perspective.
Multi-country, I mean.
It's not just multi-country. Some of the countries are extremely complex from the taxation perspective. For example, I was talking to a guy from Mexico yesterday, okay, and he said you have no idea how complex taxation gets here. Okay, you have to track every single product, and the government needs to know about every single transaction that you are selling. So that's how complex countries such as Mexico gets, and that's the trend that you have in India, Brazil. These countries require far more control on every single dollar that is moving in your company, and that ERP implementation gets very complex. US is far more liberal in general. Okay, any other comments, guys? Okay. All right, so I'm actually going to move to the first slide. And here, this is the history that we have. And the product used to be called Baan. That's what is mentioned here. And this was, again, goes back to 1978. So it's been there for a while. And one of the events that we have in the Baan history is there was a time when Boeing actually installed Baan. Okay, that was a big deal, because when you talk about Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, they always go for SAP. It's very, very, very hard to pull off that kind of workload, SAP or Oracle. But SAP is still a very gold standard for these larger companies. And at one point of time, Baan actually replaced SAP in Boeing, and that was a big deal. Because of the kind of workload it could do, and everybody sort of felt that Baan was a great product overall. But then they ran into a lot of financial difficulties overall, and that's why Baan is where it is today. Technically, it was always very, very strong product in general. It's just that the management wasn't as capable as an ERP company would probably require. So here, the statement says Baan became a real threat to market leader SAP after winning a large Boeing deal in 1994. It went IPO in 1995 and became a public listed company in Amsterdam and US NASDAQ. Several large consulting firms around the world partnered to implement Baan 4. Was one of the very famous product that people still connect with and recognize. For multinational companies, it acquired several other software companies, but here's where they started having a lot of trouble. The fall of the Baan company began in 1998. The management exaggerated company revenue by booking sales of software licenses. Oh my goodness. So, classic Enron story, I guess. Okay. So Baan was sold at a price of roughly about $700 million to Invensys, and there have been many different transactions. Finally, it landed in the capable hands of Infor, and Infor was always very financially savvy because that's how they started. I mean, they were more of the investor than the software developer, so obviously they knew how to run a business, and that's where the Baan product or the Infor LN is still very successful in general. That's pretty much it for the history. Now these are different versions that they have developed. Obviously, Infor has done a wonderful job overall in porting it over your Infor OS and providing the cloud capabilities that obviously you didn't have in the case of Baan. So right now we are looking at roughly what Infor ERP LN 6.1, and it's localized in many different languages because it's still installed in many different countries in Europe. And I have seen some really strange countries that I've never seen an ERP implementation. Typically they would go for a very mom and pop solution in those countries because none of the mainstream ERP vendors really support them. For example, if you look at countries like Thailand, Vietnam, Austria, these are the countries it's going to be really hard to find an ERP solution, mainstream ERP solution that supports the taxation, the regulation of those countries. And typically you are going to have an ERP vendor that is going to have 100 installations specializing just in that country. But Infor LN has been installed in all of those countries. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Phil, I know you joined late. Do you want to introduce yourself? I know you missed it. Yeah, we can have your introduction.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. Phil Coerper from Ringling Business Solutions. We help executive leadership teams align their digital strategy with their core business plans. And I come to you with a lot of background in ERP implementations and upgrades, and looking forward to the conversation. Story I ran a little tardy tonight.
Okay, thank you so much for being here, Phil. So I'm actually going to back to our commentary, and this is how the Infor Cloud Suite looks, especially for the LN product. If you go to Infor site, then they have different Cloud Suite. In Cloud Suite, meaning they are going to combine an ERP, and they are going to be combining many different solutions. That's what they are calling it as the Cloud Suite. So in the case of Infor LN, you are going to get a lot more options overall in terms of the best of breed solutions that come as part of Infor LN. Infor Sightline or the CSI, which is sort of the mid-market solution, you might not have as many integrations, you might not have as many options. So this is really for Infor LN. So Infor LN is integrated with your Infor SCM. Okay, SCM is their supply chain management solution. So Phil, you are probably going to get kicked out of it because this is what we are looking at. Things like, if you look at SAP EWM. SAP EWM is the supply chain, completely separate supply chain management solution that has your TMS, WMS capabilities. Similarly, Infor SCM is going to have the whole network planning, the supply chain planning, multimodal planning. All of that is going to be part of Infor SCM. So it's far a stronger product overall for those multinational companies when they have to design their supply chain networks and plan around that. So CSI does not have integration with Infor SCM because probably smaller companies don't need that. And then you have the Infor WFM product, which is their HCM product. Now, this is slightly different overall, okay? In terms of capabilities, you are going to be thinking that, you know what, if I am, let's say, going for a specialized HCM solution, why am I not going for something like SuccessFactors or Workday, which are the name brand in the HCM space, and why Infor WFM? But when you look at, companies such as your aerospace and your automotive, when you are going to have those unionized labor and they have very strict requirements in terms of how you are going to be reporting for all of those unions and how you are going to be paying unionized labor, that's a very different process in general. That requires a lot of configuration development on top of your vanilla HCM. So Infor WFM is going to be very specialized for very specific micro verticals where you have the problems of unions, and it typically is going to be stronger overall in terms of functionality than the solution that you are going to get from Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, or Workday. The Infor Burst is similar. You might probably get some more analytics compared to your mid-market solution that you have, CSI, and obviously SXC is the distribution product. So Infor Burst is the same. CPQ is the complete same product, okay? So it is the same product that comes with your mid-market solution, and LN has the same solution. They both are pre-integrated, so there is no difference as such. PLM discrete, you are probably not going to find that integration with your CSI. That you are not going to find that part of the Cloud Suite bundle. If you need to get that, then probably you need to integrate it yourself, or you need to find an integrator who can integrate for you. So this is all, again, when it comes to LN's capabilities, it's far more integrated. It provides far more best of breed options than your mid-market solution. So that's a real differentiator between LN and the mid-market solutions.
The Burst product is actually built in, it's part of the Infor OS stack. So most of the Infor products do have access to the Burst system as well.
Yeah, agreed.
So the SCM and the PLM functionality, I know we'll get to that on some later slides, but just on a high level, how robust is that? Because those are two things that even the big enterprise systems, if you're going to add that on, it takes quite a bit of extra expense and work to add those into a project.
The SCM, the WFM, and the PLM systems are all add-ons. They're all independent systems. They can be sold standalone, but they certainly do integrate very well to the LN product. They're quite robust.
It's impressive.
So the SCM product that we have, it's they acquired a company called Nexus, and Nexus was installed with massive companies in terms of the supply chain. So Infor SCM has very deep capabilities overall in terms of that the global supply chain planning when you look at that. So it's definitely very strong. The PLM is very, again, when you look at the PLM solution, every PLM solution is probably going to be specialized in specific industries because PLM processes vary, the products vary a lot. So this is going to be very well aligned with your automotive PLM processes and the aerospace. You are going to find all of that, and the quality is going to be sort of integrated as well, because that's what you are getting with the Infor OS layer. You are going to get the quality as part of your engineering. You are going to get collaboration, and then finally the quality is going to be inbuilt as part of your the ERP itself. The biggest gap that Infor always had was the MES solution. Okay, even though it was really strong in everything else, MES was a gap. Okay, that's what they did with the acquisition of Lighthouse. That's what they had to fill, and Lighthouse is going to be far stronger MES solution overall, and that's where companies are going to get much deeper Industry 4.0 capabilities. If you look at companies like Apicor, Plex, they had far stronger MES solution that Infor never had.
Absolutely agreed.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much the Lighthouse product is really rolled out yet. Sam, are you familiar?
No, I have not seen any news announcement. I'm pretty sure they are integrating at this point of time. and
Yeah,
that integration
being
is going to be
perfect.
very thick overall. But I'm very excited with that integration. Obviously, the MES offering looks really slick. Okay, Lighthouse was really strong overall in terms of capabilities, and once that is going to be pre-integrated within 4OS, it's going to be overall the offering is going to be very strong.
Everyone talks about Industry 4.0 these days.
Yep. All right, guys. So some of the capabilities that I really wanted to highlight, and this is the, and I try to make them bigger, to be honest, this time. Hopefully you guys can see it. And Phil, if you don't know, you can actually full screen. So I don't know if you are typically on full screen, but there is an option in StreamYard to do full screen as well, so that you guys can see it comfortably.
Yep,
But
I'm
this
all
is,
set on that, Sam. Thank you.
thank you. So this is how the Gantt view is going to look from the project perspective. By the way, Andy, this is what I was talking about, the JSC Gantt chart. So this is really for the job shop, and these are your orders and operations that have the start date, end date, and you can move around these things. You can really do the pegging that you are going to get with SAP. Again, LN is a very SAP look-alike product. Okay, everything that LN does is very SAP centric. Obviously, you are not going to pay as much as SAP. SAP gets very expensive. I don't know, what is the price point of LN these days. Probably they are comparable, but maybe you are going to get far more functionality as part of Infor LN than SAP. But overall, you will get, when you look at Infor LN product, it has very strong SAP feel. I don't get that feel when I look at the mid-market product. They appear very, very, very different, even though both of them are, sourced using the same technology architecture in 4OS, but the products are completely different. Okay, so this is the configurator that we saw in case of CSI. So it's the same configurator, which is the advantage, okay? Whether you are a mid-market company or a large company, both of them get the same configurator. We saw this in case of Epicor. Epicor had really weak configurator. You could not see as you apply the changes. And as it is shown in the screenshot, it's the large piece of machinery, and that this is where Infor really shines, and Infor LN shines even more. Infor LN is really designed for very complex, long-standing products for which the manufacturing is going to go for multiple days, multiple weeks, multiple months, or maybe years. Okay, because to build this kind of machine, when I went for some of the customers, who were building these machines, the total time to build these machines were like what? Sometimes 6 months, 12 months, sometimes 2 years. That's how long it took to build, some of these machines. So that is the length of the transaction that we are talking about overall, from your engineering processes to your design, then manufacturing, and then servicing. And that's where Infor LN is going to be a really great fit. Okay, so this is the view of their. This is going to be for the way their code screen is structured, and this is the similar feel that we have in the case of SAP, where on the code you could actually have, let's say you want to have the total line, the way your invoice is going to appear. Let's say you are going to have your subtotal. You want to hide one line, disable one line. Those capabilities are part of your Infor LN. Typically we see those in the case of your SAP, when you have to sort of configure your code and configure the formatting, and obviously that cannot impact your forecasting, that cannot impact your production. It is really at the code level how you want to show it to the customer, so that you can do all of that, plus you can handle your costing, production, or whatever is driven from this BOM. So all of those capabilities seem to be there overall within Infor LN. Now, when you look at the screens, the way they are designed, it's very SAP feel. For example, let's say if you are going to get different contract, you are going to get multiple change on each of the contract. Now, those changes need to be part of your operational process, financial process that need to be tracked. You need to know which change you are working on, how many changes have been done, how many payments have been done, how many milestones have you completed. Now, that's a very, very, very involved manufacturing process, as opposed to doing something like, okay, I'm building an automotive part, takes 2 hours for me to be able to build it. I have 4 operations, boom, the part is done. Okay, the order is closed in one day. That's a very different manufacturing process than this kind of manufacturing process, where it's going to be very long standing. Okay, this is how their project structure look, and this is what is going to be really helpful for companies that have very project-centric manufacturing. And as part of your project management, you are going to have everything starting from your engineering to your production and the project management itself, then the estimation and bid, and how you are going to be accounting towards the contract that you might have with these guys, and then finally procurement and then service. So all of that is going to be part of one project. You are going to get your cost, and Phil is going to be so happy looking at this because he needs to know how much you have invested in a project at any point of time so that he can track the cost. If you guys have any comment, I can take those, but
just like you say, very robust.
Exactly. Now, this is the project schedule, and this is how I personally like to see project schedule if I'm a very project-centric company. To be honest, if I'm in the aerospace, I probably want this. The way the scheduling is done, and by the way, the scheduling includes every single aspect of the project, which includes your manufacturing. Now, manufacturing systems can never do this. Okay, some of these smaller systems, such as Microsoft, Business Central, have these capabilities because they are targeted more towards the project management organizations, but they are going to really struggle on the deep core manufacturing capabilities. The manufacturing systems have very deep manufacturing capabilities, but they struggle with the project-centric capabilities. And this is where these larger systems really shine, because they are going to have everything, even though everybody in the market is claiming, what can you do? I can do everything. Okay, engineer to order, project manufacturing, make to stock, make to order. No. Okay, all of those systems are going to be really, really inefficient in managing all of those processes. The only systems that can manage all of these manufacturing types are going to be really the large system. They are designed for that. Okay.
But
Now,
Sam, all the other ERPs always have a list of different industries they target, and it's every industry from A to Z, though. Or
exactly.
A to Z in the US. I am bilingual.
Yep. You are right. You are definitely right. Okay, so this is the resource management view, and especially for aerospace and automotive, this is going to be absolutely critical. Okay, the majority of the manufacturing systems cannot do resource management, and they really struggle with that. So there are only few systems that can do the skill-based resource management and allowing that skill set to be scheduled as part of your scheduling component, that either you are scheduling services or you are scheduling your production or whatever you are scheduling. All of those are equally important. When you talk about scheduling, manufacturing community, the only thing they talk about is the production floor scheduling, but the other things are equally important. If the parts are not going to be on the production floor at the right time, your scheduling is not going to work anyways. So each of those scheduling component and the skill metrics that you might be using across your organization, all of them are equally important. And this is where systems like Infor LN really shines, because you can literally track their calendars, you can track them on the map, and you can include them, and then the system is going to tell you whether you have the enough availability or not, considering all of the constraints that are built as part of the system.
Yeah, this one I really like, Sam. It's an excellent way to break silos down, because typically the engineering, the technical resources, drafting resources, those are being managed separately by a different person, maybe on spreadsheets, maybe what have you. And this puts everybody on a common platform to see where the bottlenecks of a project really are, and then can work together to say, okay, it's not just the director of engineering saying it's 1 million hours of engineering.
Exactly. Exactly. And you have the complete cost element in terms of who's basically, causing delays. So you have the end-to-end traceability. And again, that's what Phil likes.
Hey, Sam, we got a good comment from one of the viewers. Can't see who it is, but he's asking, for this particular product, how well would it fit in a commercial construction environment like skyscrapers, dams, or bridges? And then just goes on to ask, or does that type of construction have significantly different requirements? You have any experience?
So construction is a very different beast in general. So I would be a little careful, in positioning this product for construction, even though if you go to Infor, they might say that, it's going to be okay. In fact, I think they like to position M3 as part of their construction, software, but they are not going to be as strong on the operational aspect of the construction. And the operational aspect of the construction is very different, the way the construction jobs are going to be. So Infor LN is not really designed for that. You are going to have packages such as Procore. They actually do far better job overall in managing the operational aspect of the construction, where you are going to have multiple, the GCs, general contractors, and you are going to have your subcons. So the way their relationships are managed, the way their RFP collaboration, the submittal process works, you don't have that in case of your aerospace. Aerospace submittal process and the compliance process is very different from your construction. In the case of construction, even the sales forecasting very different. Okay, sometimes you are competing, using multiple channels, using multiple opportunities. So you are going to be double counting those opportunities. And if the product is not really going to be designed for your construction, your sales forecasting is not going to work. So again, the construction is a very different beast. So if you are in the construction space, try to find a product that is going to be designed for construction. If you are very heavy in manufacturing, and sometimes you need to make your mind in terms of what you want to do, because sometimes the business is going to be so complex that they require everything. So you need to figure out, okay, are you more of the construction business or the manufacturing business? And based on that, you are going to decide which ERP system is going to be a better fit for you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I was just going to add to that. A great place to start looking is going to be the white papers and or their customer case studies.
Yep.
As you're looking at some of these solutions. So just wanted to add that in there. What were you going to say, Andy?
Well, construction it's like every other industry target. Construction can be very, very wide and diverse, from building homes, townhomes, etc. But Sam mentioned Procore, which of course is designed specifically for that market. But I think that if you asked the folks at Infor about LN, they would tell you it would be okay for structural fabricators. There's probably some limitations, but and there'll be overlap with these other construction type systems. But for a fabricator, it's probably going to be okay.
Yeah, I think the distinction Sam made, are you acting as the GC? Are you acting as a sub? Are you doing multiple projects? That level of complexity is also really important to ferret out.
Absolutely.
If you're going to move to something like Procore versus this.
All right, guys, so some more slides. We'll get through them. So here, some of the things that, again, Phil, you are probably going to like this, because you have things like handling unit. Okay, and handling unit is going to be very important for the global organization, the way it works. Okay, so for example, let's say if you are just one site, you don't have your goods moving from one site to the next. You are not necessarily tracking your logistics. So the majority of these smaller systems, they typically end as soon as the good leaves your warehouse. They don't have to worry about the overall supply chain planning. But handling unit is going to be handy, because you need to track, okay, whatever is going on truck, you need to define that configuration. So for example, let's say if you are going to compare this with your site line product, then you are going to see things like container. Okay, you might see delivery order, but handling unit is a very different functionality. Okay, when you are automotive and when you are sending that, and I don't know, maybe you guys can coach me on this. I don't know what you call that, the truck that takes, let's say, the 20 or 50 cars. I don't know what you call that. Is that an automotive truck, or is there a name for that? Now, when you have to package that, then you have to have something, and that is what is called handling unit. Dave, you have a comment there.
No, I was going to answer your question. Is a car carrier, I believe.
Car carrier. Okay.
Yeah. Technical term.
Yep. Andy, you had a comment as well? Okay.
No, I was going to say the same as Dave. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, car carrier. Okay, so when you are really defining the car carrier, you need to know that, okay, if you are going to be scanning just the car carrier, are you able to scan all of those products that are going to be part of that handling unit? And that's the purpose of the handling unit. It could be a very small pallet, but the whole idea of handling unit is going to be, number one, you are going to have parent-child relationship. Number two, you are going to have the serialized number that can be used to track your entire supply chain. It could be as small as a pallet, or it could be as big as a truck, depending upon how you want to define that, right? So that's where the real differentiator is. Now, you are going to find this functionality again, in some products such as CSI, my CSI reseller is going to say that, you know what, I have my serialized unit that can work as the handling unit. No, that's not how handling units are supposed to be designed. Handling unit has very specific role to play in the supply chain, and most of the manufacturing systems are not really designed for that. What is that called? The multi-site supply chain planning. They are not really as good at that.
Hey, Sam, I had a question. How have you seen any of these, especially like I'm curious on the larger, solutions like LN? How have you seen, especially when it comes to like that handling unit, how does that integrate with RFID, or does it integrate with RFID at all if you were to implement that, within either a package or kind of within that handling unit? I'm just curious if you had any experience with that.
So I don't know if Infor or any other products are probably going to provide any out-of-the-box capabilities to handle RFID. Maybe there is an add-on, and these add-ons are really easy to build, to be honest. As long as you have the hierarchy supported as part of your ERP system, you could have just one field that is going to be at the handling unit level. That's going to be a custom field, and that is going to keep your RFID, as long as you don't have one-to-one relationship. The problem starts happening when you don't have that one-to-one relationship supported by your ERP system. For example, let's say if you require your lot level traceability, but if the ERP system does not support that, let's say if they have just the item level, traceability, then you are going to be making a lot of shortcuts. Okay, and the system is not going to work. So that one-to-one relationship is very important overall. But as long as, so in this particular case, let's say you have RFID, assign RFID to each of the handling unit, and as opposed to using your serial number, you could use your RFID number, and that could work as well. So it's not a very difficult implementation.
Right.
Okay,
yeah. Look at it. I look at that as just another version of a scanner, right?
Exactly.
Another way to get information into the ERP. There'll be something. There'll be Honeywell or someone out there that'll sell you the device and sell you the software, and the integration on that, from what I've seen, are relatively straightforward.
Exactly. But let's say if you don't have handling unit supported as part of your ERP system, you have a real trouble there. So make sure the way your transactions are organized, the data model can support all of those transactions. A lot of smaller ERP systems might not be able to do that. Now, when you look at consignment handling, that comes out of the box. You look at global trade compliance, and sometimes you might be wondering, why the hell do you need global trade compliance? Okay, the usefulness of that is going to be when you are going to be selling in multiple countries. Sometimes you are going to have weird rules that no, you are not supposed to be importing this specific item, and each country is going to give you a catalog, what you can import, what you cannot import, or what you can export, right? So now that becomes a very involved functionality overall, and sometimes they might require you to report in terms of what you are importing and exporting. So that becomes very complex reporting functionality that needs to be supported as part of your ERP system. We have seen this in case of QAD, and the reason why QAD has this, because QAD is also positioned for automotive industry, electronics industry, and that's where you have these problems where you are going to have real global trade compliance capabilities that you are going to require. You also have the mobile capabilities, and again, this mobile capabilities may be perceived as similar to your construction, where you are going to a site and you are getting a signature for based on your supervisor, or I'm again missing the term of the guy, foreman, right? For the construction.
Foreman, supervisor, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have that, then obviously LN is going to support that. Sometimes people are going to be thinking that this is a very construction specific functionality, but this is going to be really relevant for the service orders that you are serving in automotive aerospace. That's where it is going to be really relevant. Now, this is where the difference is overall in LN versus other products that you are going to see from Infor. So this is your slightly more QAD experience. If you remember, the way you are going to be configuring your screen. In my mind, I mean, this is a very Salesforce experience as well. The way you can customize your list views, the way you can customize your screen, this is far easier than opening up the whole .NET framework. That's what you will see with the other applications that are built on top of your Mongoose framework. I don't know if LN is completely ported on Mongoose framework. That is their go-to sort of technical solution for Infor OS. So I don't know how much LN has been ported, but it looks very different overall from the technical architecture perspective, the way the product is designed. So it's not going to be the same experience. Let's say if you're moving from your CSI or SXE to your LN or M3 to LN, it's going to be a very different experience overall. Now, this is the business partner functionality that SAP was always known for. Okay, business partner was one of the sweetest functionality that you can find, and you had to struggle a lot overall because typically in the organization, your customer-centric processes were completely different from your vendor-centric processes. But when you look at the larger organization, a customer could be a supplier as well, and you need that functionality built as part of your ERP systems. A lot of ERP systems out there don't support that, and even the smaller companies nowadays probably need that. If you don't have that, you are probably going to have two different instances, and then you are going to have a lot of trouble overall from the finance perspective. This is the overall the warehouse location and the handling unit functionality. Again, that is very involved because it is considering a lot of different factors in your scheduling. This is going to be how much space you have in each of the warehouse, how much space this handling unit is going to take. So you have the square footage of that, and then finally it is also going to be the distance that each of the trips are going to take during your service order. So the scheduling factors and everything, including your real estate, distance, map, so many different things, and that's how strong your scheduling component is going to be when you are looking at slightly bigger solution such as LN. This is again, I love handling units. Okay, the smaller systems don't have handling unit, unfortunately, because this is the play for supply chain, to be honest. Okay, this is where supply chain really comes to life, because you talk about tracking these things inside the warehouse. How much capacity do you have at this point of time, whether you can track that, right? And how the goods are moving from one warehouse to the other warehouse. And again, supply chain is where the real trouble is going to be overall from the ERP perspective. And when you are, let's say, 4 or 5 sites, supply chain, you can make a lot of money if you do it right. Okay, so you have some more, things such as I mentioned. For example, let's say distance is what it is considering as part of the computation when it is going to be computing the scheduling for the resources, when you are going to have all of those service orders that are being scheduled. So everything is considered, including your distance on the map. That's going to be your the warehouse capacity from the handling unit perspective. So that's where the real differentiator is. Smaller ERPs, they are going to have a little bit of scheduling, but they are not going to have all of these variables that are going to be factored in because they don't have data to be able to really make the scheduling strong. And even if you have this, most people will not be able to figure out how to use this because obviously you require far deeper consulting expertise to be able to set this up. So yeah, I mean, if you really are strong on the scheduling and serious about scheduling, you have to hire really good consultants who really know how to set this up. And by the way, this is the piece. And again, when I look at the project-centric manufacturing systems, my perspective always is going to be that they are not going to be as strong with the manufacturing. They are going to have problems with their BOM. So I was paying really deep attention to how their BOMs were structured. In case of Epicor, we saw that your materials and your operations were completely different, the way their BOMs look. Here, you have the close affiliation of the operations with your material. So you are not going to get as many problems as you are going to get with some of the assembly-centric, ERP, even though they might be stronger in the project manufacturing, but they might not be as strong with the real manufacturing that is happening on the shop floor. So this is where LN is really good. It can do both the engineer to order as well as the project-centric manufacturing. This is the compliance one that I was talking about, and you have the license ID, and this functionality gets very involved overall. You need to get license ID from, I don't know whether this is from the state authority or whatever, but each of the transaction needs to have the license ID, and you need to make sure that you are compliant with the laws of that country if you are importing or exporting. Now that's a very, very, very deep functionality. If you are a global organization, you probably need that, or you are going to be hiring 50 people just to compute this and report. Good luck with that. So it gets really involved overall. And this is the load plan Gantt chart. And I absolutely love this because this is going to be your logistics that you are planning, and you have a real view. You can move around. Again, in these smaller ERP systems, you just don't have that because they don't have the underlying data of the handling unit for them to be able to produce this. So it's very, very, very hard for them to be able to do the supply chain planning as well as the logistics planning. You are going to find only that in the bigger systems.
Say, Sam, did you find any advanced shipping notification functionality in this? I mean, they're really strong on the supply chain. Was kind of looking to see if they had ASN capabilities.
That's going to be really baby functionality, in my opinion, Phil. They probably have the vendor collaboration as well. I don't recall, but I think they can do vendor collaboration. They have vendor collaboration as part of their M3 product, built as part of the product. I can almost guarantee that they are probably going to have as part of your LN as well.
Right. You would think because these are, like you say, these are more robust. You would think they would have that ability to get into ACN and to get into really managing the entire flow of their goods.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, guys. So commentary.
Well, you already discussed LN's history, Sam. And yeah, it originated in the Netherlands. I remember when it first came over to North America, and it was pretty big news. Boeing was definitely one of their flagship projects back in '94, and since then Boeing has migrated to something else. But over the last 3-4 years, I think. But some of their other big name clients are Heineken, Ferrari, Bausch and Lomb. Like they're a serious player. They've got to some serious traction in the industry.
Phil, Dave?
I was going to say that this one really fills out that next tier, right? Be below the supposed big three. Yeah. And I think really fills out where some of like the Microsoft products are trying to find an in-between product, or SAP trying to find some in-between product. And these guys really nail it in that in-between, just below enterprise level. And it's impressive software. I still try to figure out on this particular one, and maybe you covered it in the opening, of where really the holes are with these guys. Where are they still a little bit lacking, that if I'm a customer, I'm looking at them and I'm in manufacturing, you hit some of their real strengths, supply chain, where when would I say, okay, that's my lane for me as a client, versus me saying, nah, I really need to get more. And I found that it's in whether you really want human resources, where you really need supply chain, whether you really need some of the more complex processes, PLM we mentioned earlier. But I'm interested in the other people's opinion. Where are the kind of the holes where you would say, okay, this isn't quite robust enough, I need to look for more?
Well, some of those functionalities, as we discussed, like you're saying, like the PLM or the other functions you were talking about, are other products within the Infor portfolio. Mm-hmm. And they do at certain levels integrate with each other. So it can become, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, but I don't think this would be ever considered in a retail environment.
No, it's definitely not a right fit.
Yep. And you hit construction, I thought, with a really good explanation on that. If you're really trying to manage outwardly like that.
So, Phil, I will help you with the answer if that might help. So I would probably not position this with the public companies because they are going to require far deeper financial capabilities. Oh, yeah. When you talk about the financial traceability, you have financial traceability as part of your business product. Okay, you don't have that in all of this, so it could become really hard when you have the transactions flowing. And so manufacturing, operations, supply chain is going to be great. Okay. But when it comes to the real finance, okay, good luck with that. It could be really hard to do that in something like LN if you're a very global organization. And I think they are trying to build that. It's much better than your Apicore Infor CSI, but still, it's not SAP.
Yeah, I was thinking, is it when you really have a diverse global organization?
Yeah.
And that's where, companies like SAP just are built for that.
Yeah.
And
Dave?
the financial comment is a really good comment. That's helpful.
No, all really good commentary from my standpoint. You guys are covering a lot of the high points that we typically cover on these sessions. One thing that didn't really come up, Sam, but with kind of the genesis of how this has come to be, I'm curious to get your take on the the functionality from the cloud perspective as compared to what the original solution started out being.
Yeah, so I guess, I mean, it's a very legacy product. Obviously, it was built in 1978. So again, when you are carrying 20 different products, even today, it's going to be really hard to re-architect everything, because obviously it's a very complex product. And then you have to manage your existing customers as well as put them on Infor OS, because you are trying to present as if you are one product. You are not. Okay, you have many different products underneath. So obviously you need to please all of that. So right now, if you look at the functionality, for example, let's say if we compare this with Epicor Kinetic, Epicor Kinetic is way ahead, even though they started very late in the cloud native game, right? So even though it is going to be served in the cloud nativeness is not there compared to some of the other products. They are probably going to be slightly superior.
Yeah, I figured you go there too, just looking at the screens, right?
Yep.
I'm curious to take. I kind of figured the same, but I was really setting you up for another question. So I'm curious though, because we talk about this on most of these sessions. So I'm curious, maybe how can somebody that is evaluating these different systems, how can they include that cloud functionality kind of preparedness in their determination of what's going to be the best product for them moving forward? I'm curious if you have any kind of input on how somebody can go about comparing, because all of these solutions, to your point, present as though that functionality appears across all releases of their product, if you will. Are there some things that you look at when you're looking at these solutions to know?
So honestly speaking, in my opinion, you'll be lucky if you can find that, to be honest. I miss on a daily basis, because that's how difficult it gets to find out, okay, what is cloud native and what is. You literally need to look at the code to be able to find that. So again, it's very, very, very hard to find the cloud nativeness. And if you're looking for that, you probably require an expert. Otherwise, you are most likely going to miss it. And the vendors they are all saying they are all cloud native, so it gets really confusing.
Well, and a related one is the functionality, bait and switch thing.
Yeah.
That happens throughout these, where they'll talk about functionality that's in their legacy or in their on-prem systems, and it hasn't quite been moved to the cloud. And the next thing you know, you're in a conversation about their product roadmap, which is a waste of your time. It really, I think the other side of that answer, Dave, is and Sam's taught us this over and over again. Find out what's most important functionality, what really matters to you, and dig deep to say, is the product I'm buying, if it's cloud product, does that functionality exist? The cloud native thing may or may not be as important, Sam, than that you're really getting what you think you're buying out of the cloud product that they're selling you.
I guess that's kind of my point, Phil, is how can as a consumer, as somebody that's going to be going through that evaluation stage, how can you narrow into that? Because yes, I agree, you have to focus on what the business process is to begin with. But what I was really trying to get at is, how do you wade through the sales speak to make sure, because that's one thing I don't think we really cover on these sessions. How do you wade through some of that, at least at a high level, without, obviously engaging somebody to help you in that process is part of it. But there's got to be some other things to keep. Dave. What's that, Andy?
I said, I'm not sure if it's possible. I mean, even with an expert like Sam or somebody like that, they still have tricks up their sleeve, and they can still make it look like it does when it doesn't. That's the whole thing about the whole ERP industry.
Yep.
Right from the smallest systems we've evaluated to the SAPs of the world.
But I do think one thing, and I just picked on product roadmap, so I'll come back and talk about it a little bit. how aggressive they are of moving things to their cloud platform that they're trying to sell you, what they've been doing, what their quarterly update looks like, what investments they're really making, I think is a good tell. That they're wherever they're at on the journey, at least they're continuing to make that investment to get as much functionality to the cloud as possible. Whereas if you look at that and what they've put up on their cloud product is very rudimentary and not that robust the last year, chance of it being much better moving forward is probably not great. Because like to Andy's point, you're going to miss. You're going to think you got some functionality and all of a sudden you're going to learn after, well, okay, well, that's not really what it does.
But how do you know about their true R&D investment unless they're a public company, Phil?
Well, I mean, they will show it off, you know, especially if they're investing in a SaaS product, they're going to show off their quarterly updates and tell you all the great functionality they just added last year, you know, and so you can, and again, it still comes down to asking really good questions. You know, and I've always, and I think the other thing too is the faster you can get less sales guys on the call and say, I want to meet my implementation team. And then they're going to say, well, we don't know who that is because we can't really schedule them because you haven't really committed. And then you say, I'm not listening to you. I want to meet my implementation team.
Yeah, you better keep Andy up.
Phil actually provided your answer, Dave. Phil provided your answer. Okay. So what he's trying to say is if you actually pay attention to the roadmap, you are going to find what you are releasing on a quarterly basis. Now, if you ask roadmap from Infor, you are not going to find. Now, my question is going to be Infor, are you a real cloud company? If you are a real cloud company, then you will have roadmap published everywhere. SAP has that, Acumatica has that, NetSuite has that. You know, the real cloud companies have their roadmap published. Yes, Infor is going to say we are continuous development shop and we are publishing code on a daily basis. That's how aggressive we are. But we still need to see what your roadmap is and where that exists.
Well, the Infor does publish their roadmaps. It's just they're only 18 months into the future, maybe 12 months into the future.
So I have one more question for Andy. I know we're out of time, but Andy, I thought Zed was the head guy in Men in Black. So I'm a little confused on that one.
All right, guys, so we need to close. I mean, we are out of time right now. We can take some more short comments. I know you guys want to have fun and until 7 o'clock, but unfortunately, we don't have time for that. Any more short comments? All right, guys, so that's it for today. Again, if you are the automotive and the aerospace and the complex manufacturing shop that require deeper supply chain, deeper manufacturing capabilities, that's where Infor LN really shines. So make sure you at least review the solution when you are evaluating your next ERP. On that note, thanks everybody for joining. If you joined for the first time, this was part of our industry series for which we meet every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We review one vendor or the solution. So make sure you guys are going to be here next week. We are going to come back with another vendor or the solution. On that note, thanks again, everyone, for your time and insight tonight.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks everybody.
Thanks.